So nice to meet people. I'm John Gallagher. I'm a board member of the COC, and I am also an assistant professor of social work at the University of Arkansas. And he'll introduce himself, but assisting me is one of our graduate students, Cohen. So appreciate everyone taking their time today. And yeah, turn it over to Cohen for his introduction.
Well, yeah. Hello, my name is Cohen. I am an MSW student at the university, and I've been interning with the COC for the past semester or so, working on the pit count. So excited to be getting close to getting it done. But nice to meet everyone.
Yeah, great. All right, so I'm going to start screen sharing a PowerPoint in a second. Actually, I guess I will go ahead and do that now. Oh wait, I didn't do that. Okay, screen share. Are folks seeing my PowerPoints, and ideally only my PowerPoint, maybe some of the Zoom windows up top?
Yep, we see the PowerPoint, John.
Excellent, great, thanks so much. All right, so before we formally start, just a couple little bits of housekeeping. If you have questions for us, we have a Q&A period at the end, but also especially if there's something that fits in the category of, you know, did they misspeak? Can you clarify? That would help you understand the content in the moment. Would you please use the chat box, and Pam will be keeping an eye on that and can interrupt us if we need to. And we'll go from there. As Pam mentioned, we will be posting a recording of this. We'll also post the PowerPoint itself and a few other resources like the survey in its Word version, that type of stuff, on the COC's website. I think probably next couple of weeks at the very latest. And last bit of news, almost hot off the presses. I know we sent out a blast to Pam's COC list. Might not have got all of the volunteers, especially if you're not on that list. The point in time count has been delayed by roughly a month. Earlier this week, HUD invited COCs to request an extension of up to a month due to the Omicron spike. So as Arkansas's numbers are, doing backflips at present, we took them up on that, made the request, and it was approved. The new point in time count date will be Thursday, February 24th. And again, we've sent out one initial announcement from Pam, and Cohen and I will be reaching out to all of the more direct partners with more specific information. So if you're a volunteer, you'll be hearing from us with more detail. If this change impacts your ability to volunteer, we certainly understand that. We just ask you to communicate with us. And also, if you're like a site partner, we'll be reaching out to you all as well. And again, same obvious invitations. If the change in dates impacts your availability, we'll problem solve that together. So, and yeah, I think that's it. Let's go ahead and get started. Oh, and the last logistical thing is this is scheduled for an hour. I've never done this talk before. An hour seems reasonable. But if I'm still talking and you need to go, I understand that. And again, the recording will be available for the last few minutes if it comes to that. Okay, so these just kind of spacer slides. All right, so what is the point in time count? So it is a attempt at a literal count of all of the individuals in our community who are experiencing homelessness on a single day, aka a point in time. It's conducted by every community in the nationwide, generally during the last 10 days of January or this year during the last 10 days of February. HUD requires each COC, each community, to conduct a full count, including sheltered and unsheltered, every other year. The Northwest Arkansas COC has historically conducted it every year, with the exception of last year. We did not do the street count due to COVID again. And just to plant a seed, and if you're interested in this, you could reach out to myself or Cohen. Our emails are at the end of the PowerPoint. As the School of Social Work, this is our first year playing this coordinating role with the point in time count. And going forward, we're going to continue to play that role. And one thing we're going to look at is we will be forming a kind of a community advisory group to help us shape the point in time count going forward. Are there additional questions we'd want to ask on a routine or an ad hoc basis to explore, subpopulations in a greater depth? I'm kind of intrigued by the idea of conducting the off-year count, the one that HUD doesn't require in the summer, because we all know that there's significant seasonal patterns to homelessness in our community. So anyway, open invitation on that. So who is counted in the point in time count? So I know many people on this Zoom are very familiar with HUD's definition. I'm just going to go over in broad strokes because it's a fairly narrow definition of individuals who are considered homeless. So to be considered homeless according to HUD and to be counted in the point in time count, an individual must either be living unsheltered, so that's an individual or family whose primary nighttime residence is a public place not meant for human habitation. In Northwest Arkansas, a lot of those folks are camping out literally in the woods, in the urban forest or the real forest. It can also be urban dwelling, sleeping in alleys, sleeping in front of buildings, park benches. In bigger cities, it could be people sleeping on subways. And it also includes individuals who are sheltered, individuals or families. So that's living in a public or private emergency or transitional shelter. A couple of things that it doesn't include that people often might think of, individuals who are doubled up. So say a family was evicted from their home and a family member took that family in. They are not considered homeless according to this definition. I will briefly note that they are considered homeless under a more liberal definition that the school districts use. And we actually coordinate with the school districts during the point in time count, and we'll receive those estimates from them, and we kind of report them side by side. But generally, we would not be engaging or counting those individuals. Couple of types of categories that maybe we might intuitively think of as homeless, but do not generally fit. If an individual is in a hospital or jail on the day of the count, they would not be considered homeless. So yeah, that's a quick answer, and I'll leave it at that point. Okay, so who is counted? Individuals who are in the sheltered point in time count, and people who are volunteering will be counting both at shelters. For us, that's primarily Salvation Army in Fayetteville and Bentonville, New Beginnings in Fayetteville, although they are going to do their own counting without volunteers from the outside, and the 2 domestic violence shelters in our community, who will also be doing the counting without outside volunteers. And a couple of the programs through the VA actually are kind of classified as shelters. And the unsheltered count would be people in those situations listed on the slide on the right. So your role, so what have you signed up to do? Fair question. So let's start to go over that. We're gonna, when we as volunteers are engaging people, and we'll talk in a minute about some engagement strategies, we have 2 forms that have been developed, and as Cohen will talk about in a few minutes, they're available both as hard copy Word documents and through a very nicely designed web-based app. So the first is by far our preferred method of data capture. It's a general survey form. It's about 5 to 10 minutes in length if folks are answering questions pretty directly. And we'll go over some of those items. It's for everyone who's willing and able. It's definitely what we would like to use. But we've also developed an observation form for people or households who are unwilling or unable to answer the survey questions. And we'll talk about those scenarios a bit. Okay, so just some basic things. I think the vast majority of the people on this call work in the field, are social work students. These are not new concepts, but they're certainly worth just kind of, reminding ourselves about quickly. We're going to be speaking with vulnerable people, and we're going to be asking sensitive questions. Some of the questions ask about substance use and health conditions, et cetera. So we should always be leading with respect and just recognizing the dignity that people have. Didn't say it formally in this slide, but also, things to think about as time allows. Leave space for human interactions. We have the questions that need to be asked. Please get to those. But a little bit of human to human small talk is a good thing. We have some outreach teams in our community, but we frankly don't have enough outreach teams in our community. And this is one day in the year where, people certainly get services throughout the year, but this is a day in the year we can think of as, our community is reaching out to our neighbors. And so leaving just some space for those conversations is not a bad thing. And maybe kind of related to that point, we've also developed a simple one-page flyer on resources that we can give to individuals we encounter. Everyone has the right to refuse to answer any or all of these questions. We can and should explain why and encourage participation, but people don't have to answer our questions. This one, we would ask you to ask all of the questions in the way that they were written, in the order that they were written, with one caveat of, and for those of you who have been, case managers and asking people intrusive questions for years, you're probably used to this. I'm a big fan of, taking a few minutes, become familiar with the entire tool. And if someone happens to mention in passing that, they received treatment for a serious mental illness, when you get to the do you have a psychiatric diagnosis question, you can comfortably just go ahead and answer yes if they've clearly answered that. But barring that type of thing, we would ask you to always ask the questions as written in the order that they were written. And we have the one example on the bottom of this slide, and even for some questions that might seem obvious or intuitive, we need to be respectful. Some people that I might think of as a person who identifies as a man or a woman might identify very differently. And we don't want to be disrespectful of those people. We don't want to capture data in the wrong way. If we ask a question in a leading way, you're male, right? We're possibly being pretty disrespectful to someone as to who they are and the core of their being. And we're also just increasing the chance that we get bad data, because that person might just simply say, yeah, sure, whatever, as opposed to, give you richer information. One caveat I'll say, that not really a caveat, maybe a strategy. When we're asking questions in that manner, we also need to be mindful of the fact that asking a person who just very clearly and confidently identifies as a man or as a woman a question in the how do you identify, that could also be a little offensive to some people. And the best way I've come up with over the years in these situations is at the very start of my interview, I'll just give people a little notice that, hey, I'm going to ask every question exactly as it's written on here. That's just meant to, I'm just trying not to, it's just important that A, it's how I'm told to do it. I'll kind of bad cop the administrators, which in this case is me. And then B, I'm just explaining briefly that don't want to make assumptions. We often guess wrong, and I just want to know how you think about your world. Say it once, say it quickly, move on, but kind of plant the seed that you're going to be asking questions in a way that some people might find a little less than obvious. Okay, so the first form that we have, and Cohen will be showing it in specific detail, or giving you a run through the web-based version, is the main form. So complete one survey form per household. I'm going to talk in a second about how we're defining households. When there are multiple members of that household, there are follow-up questions that you'll ask in sequence. And before I get into that nuance, actually, let's talk about household. So the way household is defined is It is the individuals need to have spent the previous night together. So if you speak to an individual adult and you're asking about, do they have anyone else in their household? And their answer is yes, my wife was in the hospital last night. Yes, my wife is incarcerated. Yes, my wife is currently staying with my in-laws. We respectfully, and emphasis on respectfully, let them know that that's not a person that we're able to count. And I would stress the able side of it. Again, you don't want to come across as being dismissive of someone's relationship. You just want to let them know that under the rules we have to operate from, we only are counting people who were together and homeless that previous night. And the same logic would apply to children. So there's a question, how many children are in your household and staying with you? And it's not uncommon where someone's answer could be, well, my kids aren't with me, but I have 2 kids that are staying with their paternal grandparents that are in the foster care system, et cetera. And for these situations especially, we just want to be very respectful. It's not our place to, we're not saying they're not your children, they're not part of your household and your family in the bigger, broader sense. We're just briefly and respectfully saying we're not capturing information about them today. And the other bit on the household composition, so basically if an adult couple is thinking that if they spent the night together, they cleared that threshold, and they are thinking of themselves as a couple, we have no reason to worry about, are they married? How long have you been together? We are not the judges of their relationship. They are telling us they are a coupled couple, and we are taking that at face value and respecting it and going forward. Difference, and I would generally not count as a household. It's not uncommon that people who are staying in camps together are quite close, are good buddies, have been looking out for each other for an extended period of time. We would not generally think about those people as being a household. And the last thing on the household question is most of the items on this next bullet list that I'm going to go through quickly, we will ask about every question that we ask of the main household member, we will ask of any adult. If there is a child in the household, we're only going to ask the simple demographics questions. We're not asking if children served in the military. We're not asking if children drink or use drugs or have mental health conditions. So the categories of information that we're going to request from people are eligibility. And that's not the word we're going to use, but it's basically, it really is an eligibility test. Are they meeting HUD's stringent homeless definition and thereby eligible? Really, the way to think about it is, are they people that we can and should be counting and reporting as experiencing homelessness to HUD? Variety of demographic variables. One I do want to quickly point out, they're all the common demographic variables that we're used to. HUD is particularly focused on getting a good count of children experiencing homelessness and young adults experiencing homelessness. So we have a question, we ask everyone their age, just, you say you're 51, 52, 27. If people refuse or don't know, we have a follow-up question that asks, it has 3 broad categories. Are you, I believe it's under 18, are you 18 to 25 or over 26? And that's just to let us make the HUD data reporting focused on youth and child homelessness. Next set of questions, we have a cluster about veteran status. So everyone is asked if they have served in the US military. Those who answer no are done with that section. Those who answer yes, there's follow-up questions. We have a variety of questions to probe for disabling conditions and any impact on the ability to maintain housing or employment. These questions are important for a couple of related reasons. One is just here in Northwest Arkansas, they help us understand the needs of those we serve, who's experiencing homelessness. And they're also related to HUD has a specific category of interest of individuals who are considered chronically homeless. And to be considered chronically homeless, people need to have experienced homelessness either for an extended period of time or have multiple periods. And there were earlier questions on that in our eligibility area. And they also need to have a disabling condition. So those questions are designed to feed HUD's chronic test. We also, this is a new question that we added this year, a couple of them. We've added items that will try to get a handle on where people were living when they were last stably housed. And the reason that we answer that is honestly, it kind of has something to do with local politics. And I don't mean that nefariously, but we know that a couple of the bigger communities in Northwest Arkansas are providing most of the on-demand shelters and day centers for people. And as a consequence, there tends to be some push and pull. So if you grow up in a Washington County community that doesn't happen to have services for people experiencing homelessness, and you end up homeless, you perhaps drift to Fayetteville. And so we're going to ask some questions that'll try to do a better job of understanding where people are historically from. And then there's a question that was added last year that we've, Cohen and I have kind of unpacked a bit. So last year we started asking an open text question if people's identities, broadly defined, have affected how they believe they receive homeless services. And we've maintained the open text box, but have added a couple of closed items to that. And the observation form, Cohen will go over in a bit, and I've already kind of set the table on that. Okay, so step-by-step guide. Generally speaking, approach the person, introduce yourself, ask for a few minutes of time, just kind of maintain eye contact. The first bullet here, I have some mixed feelings on. It's real, but I always want to be mindful of stigma. The majority of people we encounter are going to be calm, cool, and collected, cognitively with it and a threat to no one. But do know that the realities of homelessness in America, we are interacting with people with elevated rates of trauma histories and addiction and often undertreated mental health conditions. So, be ever on the side of respectful and giving people space, don't jump up on people, those types of things. Maintain eye contact, keep an open stance, keep your hands visible. Again, this stuff is kind of on the cautious side, but it's stuff to be mindful of. Be polite, don't shout. Goes back to some of the stuff I talked about earlier. It's an engagement opportunity. If you encounter a sleeping person, which is less likely, some cities do their counting in the evening. This is much less likely for us. Please don't wake people up for this. Instead, you could use the observation form. The one kind of caveat to this is I know when I've done a lot of the counting in camps in previous years, and I think this practice is fine. I've been comfortable with it. No one's ever complained about it. When I enter a camp, I would announce myself in a fairly loud voice. Oftentimes you'll see a cluster of tents, and it's certainly possible that someone is sleeping in a tent, and by my somewhat loudly introducing myself to the camp, I might wake them. I think the risk of that greatly outweighs just the benefits of the downside of startling someone. To a large extent, we're entering people's homes when we do this. Not legal homes, but homes in that very real sense. And we should be mindful of that for respect reasons, for safety reasons. So we've got a scripted blurb that is on the top of our surveys that we would suggest you use. Explain what we're doing. What a damn weird thing. You show up in the early morning in the, as the sun is getting ready to set, and you say you're a local do-gooder and you're interested in numbers about homelessness, and can I ask you some questions? Explain it's a little more than that. Explain that we're doing this to help get a good understanding of what the realities and needs are of people in our community who are experiencing homelessness, so that we can hopefully do a better job of addressing them in the coming years. Let people know that the federal government that gives us some money to help out with services requires that we do this. Again, I think most of us as Americans we've closed in a lot in recent years, and you know, I'm less happy when someone knocks on my door at home than I was 10 years ago. I think we should kind of be mindful of that, and just it's always good to explain why you're knocking on someone's door, whether they have a literal door or not. If they consent to answer the questions, then go forth. And if they don't, thank them for their time and use the observation form. And one thing I'll mention on this, if someone is flatly refusing, doesn't seem comfortable with us capturing information about them, I do still want you to complete the observation form. I would suggest you don't whip it out in front of them and start taking notes on them. That's disrespectful. That's, you know, potentially going to lead to an increase in tension. So again, be familiar with what's on the observation form, make mental notes in your head, thank the person for their time, step away, and jot down the notes in your observation form. Step 3, conducting the interview using the survey form. As mentioned before, go through each question in the survey form. Remember, people have the right not to answer questions. And you know, this is one, I don't think we wrote it in that opening blurb, but I certainly add this to my practice. I would encourage all of you to, when you're just making that initial overview and introduction, let people know that some of the questions are a little bit sensitive, that we hope you're comfortable sharing it for the aforementioned reasons of it helps us better serve, get federal funds, blah, blah, blah. But then, you know, we're asking sensitive questions. We encourage you to answer them, but please know that if you would just as soon skip an individual question, you're more than welcome to. Let people, if we say people have a right not to answer a question, we should let them know they have that right. Add any notes that may be helpful. This is easier on the paper version, to be honest. So one of the recommendations I make for anyone who's counting, and if you're choosing to use the web-based option through your phone, I'm a big fan of just, you know, carrying a legal pad or a scratch pad so that you can take some notes. There is a notes field at the end of the online version. It's just a little harder to access than old school paper and pen. And step 4, close out the interview, thank the individual for their time, and offer them one of our resource flyers. All right, well, I'm going to catch my breath. You all get a break from me. Actually, I'm gonna launch this training from Hyperion's, the company that developed the web app. And after that, Cohen's gonna take it over for a little bit. Are people seeing quick question, are people seeing the commercial from Indeed, or are they still seeing my old PowerPoint?
It's still the PowerPoint at the moment.
Okay, let me fix that. All right, and are we now seeing the commercial?
Yeah, it's good.
Excellent. Oh, and last question, were you hearing the audio? Didn't think to test that.
It's a little soft. I can't really hear.
Okay, let me see if I can raise the volume on my laptop. Thankfully, it does seem to be using closed captioning. Okay, my volume's as loud as it'll be, so.
Matching your job description.
I think the audio might not be working. You might have to optimize it on the screen share for it to go through.
I'm sorry, Cohen, so what's going on?
You might have to reshare it and then click optimize sound whenever you reshare your screen, and then that should let it flow through the Zoom.
Thank you.
No problem. It'll just be like 2 little check marks at the bottom.
Share sound, perfect. Lost without you. I'm gonna start it back up.
and go to pitcounter.com. When you get there, you'll see this login screen. By now you should have a pit count code from the organizers. Don't worry, capitalization doesn't matter. Put that in with your name and phone number. The phone number is just so that the organizers can contact you during the pit count if they need to. We're using some cool technology to make the website work offline. So once you're logged in, your phone or tablet has everything it needs to fill out a survey, even if you lose internet access. I'll show you what that looks like now. First, we ask for your location. This is important so that the pit count organizers can see at a glance what the state of homelessness looks like for different parts of the region. When you click Continue, you may see a prompt from the browser asking for your location. Please allow it. If you don't see a prompt and instead you see this message come up, then that's because your browser is automatically blocking all location requests. This sometimes happens with Safari especially. Click the link and follow the instructions there. It's really important to get this sorted out, and you just have to do it once. If you're having trouble figuring it out, I'm sure one of the organizers would be happy to help. They'd rather get you set up properly and have the location data. On the next screen, you might see two choices, observation and interview. Interviews are always preferred, of course. If not, you'll just see a start button. Now we come to filling out the survey. It should be pretty straightforward, but I want to mention a couple things. First, some questions are going to appear based on your answers. That's totally normal, they're just follow-up questions. There's also one slightly wonky question that I want to mention. It's the one about additional household members. And yes, household is kind of a strange term to use when talking about homelessness, but it's the one used by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, so we use it too. Anyway, if you have 3 members of the household, this question is how we collect info about the other 2 members. You can click Add New multiple times, once for each household member. If you're unsure about any of these questions, just make sure to ask the organizers before the pit count. When you're done, you'll see a little notification. You can also see a list of the surveys you've already filled out. If you're offline and a submission fails, then it'll be retried every 10 seconds. The website will upload all surveys that failed up to that point. So if you filled out 10 surveys while offline and you regain access, then you'll see them all get uploaded at once. And that's it. The pit count is in training mode right now, so that means you can do a survey with dummy data, and you don't have to worry about it contaminating the actual results. That won't be the case on the day of the pit count, so I'd recommend filling out a few surveys today to make sure you have a handle on how the software works, so you're ready to go on the day of. Good luck, and thanks for volunteering.
All right, give me a second, Cohen, and stopping the share. And all right, I will.
Yeah, sorry.
I think YouTube is launched.
Can you see the survey
Can
on
you
here?
unshare, Cohen, and then I can't get to my.
No worries.
All right. I guess something even stranger, considering my YouTube browsing history, could have popped up. So anyway, all right, Cohen, I am turning it over to you.
All right, so I'm just gonna run through like our edition of the survey real quick. We haven't got it posted yet, so we don't have a code to give you quite yet, but it should be coming soon. We're very close, and we will probably just get an email with the link to sign up along with the code. And so as you saw in the video, you just kind of follow those steps to get started. I'm just going to kind of show you guys some of the skip logic stuff he was talking about, where if you answer one way, it'll go to something else. So that way you're not caught off guard. And just kind of show you some of the basics of what you're going to see on here. So this is like, we have these categories. There'll be qualification. This kind of determines whether the person should be surveyed. You have general questions, questions about duration, military, and then some final just questions thrown in for our purposes. So one of the things is the county. It's often going to be Washington or Benton County. Some of you will be Madison and Carroll. I'm not sure if anyone on this call will be, but as you click the county, you know, we have some pre-made kind of towns popping up here. And one thing to be aware of is if you click the other, we would like you to list that other. And this will be on a lot of other questions as well. There's an other option that should give you the option to list, and we would prefer that you did. Furthermore, if they say that they completed the survey earlier today, you click yes on that, then it will end the survey, it'll be over, because if they've already completed it, we don't need duplicates. this little staying here, if they say like a shelter or housing, we'll want you to list that, same thing with the other kind of text box again. Otherwise, if it's a park or street or sidewalk, you'll just move on. And then furthermore, if someone stayed in a motel, hotel, jail, if they've been there over 90 days, then they're not going to be included in the count either. So that'll end the survey. So these are all the qualification things. Just be aware that just be aware to scroll down and make sure something else didn't pop up. Because if you answer yes to this, you have another question. If you answer no, there's nothing. It's pretty straightforward. This is the desktop version. It's going to look pretty similar on your phone, except for it'll just be on a smaller screen. You might have to, zoom around and do that. It does take a minute to load as well. So just make sure you get in there and get logged in before the day of. So furthermore, going in here, we have like a how old are you? If they refuse to answer specifically, just try to kind of get a range. And then furthermore, this race category down here, we do have the option to select more than one. So, if someone refuses to answer, but you think you know what race they are, as we said earlier, please be respectful and just write that down in the notes, just to delay confusion. Same with the gender question. It is also, you can select more than one. But if you're making assumptions, we'd prefer that be noted in the notes section. Then otherwise, all this other stuff is, same thing. If you're not 18, they won't show some questions. So make sure that if they do say that they're over 18, you put that in there. But otherwise, just be aware. It's going to be a lot of the same stuff. Just as you said before, read it kind of how it's stated, and make sure you're being aware of what pops up and what doesn't, because every question is very important. And especially if it's an extended question, then we really need those, the data from that. So I'll go ahead and stop this. I mean, unless anyone has any other questions about kind of how this works, it's pretty basic survey software. So it should explain itself out. And then I'll show the observation form here in a moment. Let me stop here. And then Dr. Gallagher, did you want to put back up the PowerPoint for me real quick, or did you want me to put that up?
No, I got it. Is this where you want to be, Colin? Oh, wait, but you're not. It's on my screen, but that's not help. Why don't you run with it? You do you, and I'll do me later.
Sounds good. So here we go. Then.
Although actually, okay. You got it. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, it'll pop up like this, but I think that'll be fine. Can y'all still see it now with this?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So yeah, this is the same thing as I was just talking about. Obviously, offline usage as well. Like if you're in the middle of the woods or somewhere where there's bad internet, it should still let you fill it out with no problem. It will not upload until you reconnect to Wi-Fi, but it will save it for you. So no worries if you don't have internet connection. Just keep filling them out as you would otherwise. Oh, my bad. Oh. Sorry about that. It's Google Slides is hard talking. Well, Dr. Gallagher, you might need to throw it back up there. Sorry, my screen's a little frozen. Like my computer's frozen, but I can still, like the Zoom's still moving. So I'm not really sure what happened there. I can still talk though if you'll move it for me. I just need to go to the observation form. Gotcha. So this is an example of the other form we were talking about. This will just be like they said, if someone won't talk to you, or if someone looks asleep on the ground, you don't really want to interact with them, whatever it may be. If you're unable to interview, this is the form you need. It says 2019, but it'll be the same as the one we have this year, maybe some slight changes. But it's pretty self-explanatory. You put your name, you put why. This is going to be another form where you're going to probably need a lot of notes. We can go to the next slide. This will just be demographics. And then, yeah, so here is the location. So specific location or observed to the best of your ability. You may not know what the interstate exit you're by. Obviously, that's maybe more knowledge than some would know. But, if you're by a landmark or a restaurant, someone might know. Just to the best of your ability, kind of note that out. And then here, is this person homeless? Definitely, possibly not sure. If you see them and they look like they're sleeping on the ground, you can say definitely. but at the same time, don't be afraid to use that possibly button just so you're not making assumptions. And then the age question, a lot of this is assumptions as well. And this is where the notes are going to come in handy, especially if you're doing it by hand. You can say 18 to 24, but didn't get a good look at their face, and that'll be fine. Same with the gender. You don't want to make assumptions or be disrespectful. So we can go to the next slide. And then this will be the last little bit of it. And then what is the person's race and ethnicity and the nationality? And then, yeah, once again, it's hard with the observation because you kind of are having to make assumptions. But just, to the best of your ability, do that out, and whatever you're not completely sure on, just please note it out and write, let us know what the scenario is and why you might not have been able to answer that question. But all of this is pretty straightforward. I mean, if you get on the website and someone, you're in the middle of taking observation, someone wants to interview, please take the interview section. We would love to have interview data over observation data, but this is, a good fallback if you feel safety concerns or an inability to conduct the interview. We can move on to the next one. That might be it for the service. Okay, yeah, so this is like that little notes section I was talking about. So any sort of tattoos or, someone has a scar on their eye or something very obvious, that's another thing to put in just to ensure that we don't have a lot of duplicate forms submitted. But those two will pop up, and they should be posted and sent out to you guys soon. That's good on that slide as well. And the rest of it will just be kind of logistics. You're still on mute.
Thank you. A couple things I wanted to tap back to. So on the observation form, one of those questions was, do you believe the person's homeless? Definitely, possibly, or don't know. Give me a second. Let me get the share going. Okay. I think the only times I would be checking definitely would be, so I've used it when I've been in camps. So people didn't want to come out of the tent to talk to us. The margin of error that the person has a house and was choosing to recreate in the woods behind 7 Hills. I'm going to live with that margin of error and say that person is definitely experiencing homelessness. And the other thing, I've not done this, but I could see myself doing it. If someone was talking but refusing to participate and saying, I don't want to do it, I would probably take a run at, would you mind answering one question? Are you experiencing homelessness? If they say, don't want to tell you, I am absolutely done. I'm respectfully thanking them and disengaging. But that a little bit would let me put that person in the definitely homeless category. I wouldn't worry about the nuance of the HUD definition. I would just take that and feel comfortable with it. But other than that, I would be going with, somewhere between probably or don't know. I know from past counts, I rolled up on a number of people soliciting donations at intersections that I was kind of expecting homelessness, and that was not the answer I received. So I would be pretty cautious with saying definitely homeless. As Cohen alluded to, we hope to minimize these, but because they create serious data limits and issues, but we have them for a reason, because limited data is better than no data. Back to Hyperion in general, when we send out the code and the link, I think what we're going to do is, because we didn't build in today's training, we've created a test space, as Zach alluded to. We'll send out the code for the test space and for the real space. And we might even send you the test link first and then the follow-up link later. We'll think about that. But we will give you the opportunity to play with the interface in a no stakes environment before it goes live. All right, and let's go over the last bit of stuff. Where to go? I'm really going to skip this because with the everyone here is going to a site. Those of us that are doing outreach, we've been doing it for a few years and we've kind of got that. Who to interview? I think this has kind of already been pretty well implied. I want to leave some time for questions. Your safety. So, we appreciate so much what people are doing. Again, I always want to strike the balance. I want to avoid stigmatization. The vast majority of folks experiencing homelessness are no greater a danger to me than the average undergraduate students at my day job. But we should still be mindful of safety. You should always be with at least one other person. You can certainly split up, like from that kind of line of sight perspective. You don't need to be joined at the hip. That can even be a little intimidating. A person is being asked a bunch of intrusive questions by two people instead of one person. So you certainly can split up, but stay within that basic line of sight of each other generally, those types of things. Maintain awareness of your space, keep an appropriate conversational distance. Again, that has COVID implications. That has just personal space implications. I'm going to talk about COVID in greater detail in a minute. And just bottom line is, for any of these things, you trust your instincts. If something, this tends to apply more for people who are doing the camp-based outreach in counting, but if your gut doesn't feel safe with something, trust your gut. At the end of this slide, I'm offering my cell phone number for the day of the interview. If you felt like, if you found an area that has people and for some reason it didn't feel safe, reach out to me and we can explore, is there another way to more safely get out there? And don't put anyone in your vehicle. Okay, we live in a world, I was preparing my PowerPoint for my first class next week, and every PowerPoint I make has a COVID-19 section. I'm tired of this, but anyway. So the COC, we're currently drafting a waiver document. We're not going to ask people to sign, but we are going to share some information on basically the safety risks that come with just conducting these interviews in a COVID-19 environment. What we send out will be in advance of the event. We expect it to be very consistent with what we're sharing here today. So to help keep everyone safe, we have some requirements and some suggestions on the next slide. If you are working on our behalf in a confined space, as part of the point in time count, you're in a vehicle coming and going with other people, other volunteers or officers, or you're in a closed space at Seven Hills or Salvation Army, we are requiring that you wear a mask. We are requiring, and we'll provide each team with masks to offer to the individuals you interview. None of us can require that they wear them, but we would certainly encourage them, and we'll do our bit to make that convenient. We require you to respect any more stringent requirements of the sites you count at. So we're going to be reaching out to all of our site partners, and if they have a list of supplemental requirements that they would like us to share with volunteers, we'll do that in advance. So you really shouldn't be surprised. But we would also ask you to respect the on-site management. If you're going to the day center and the shelter manager asks something of you regarding COVID protocols or just general ebb and flow, please do respect those people when they're in difficult jobs. We expect all of us to stay current on CDC quarantine and isolation guidelines. Put the link in here. And please don't volunteer if those guidelines would advise you to stay home. Please do reach out to us and we'll come up with a contingency plan. And please do not volunteer if you have symptoms of COVID-19 unless you've had a negative test within the preceding 24 hours. And I'll get to the other notes after the next slide. We strongly recommend you stay current of the case numbers in our community. Again, the case numbers are through the roof right now. We are guardedly optimistic that they'll be better in late February, but frankly, we don't know that. Please do not volunteer if you have not received full vaccinations for any reason, personal preference, or medical comorbidities, including a booster. We're not requiring or enforcing this. we would just, considering the way this virus works, we would think that makes you less safe. We would think that increases the risk that you make the people you survey less safe. And we would appreciate your offers of help. And we would even work on finding a non-face-to-face way to volunteer, but we would recommend you don't volunteer if you are not fully vaccinated. We would recommend you not volunteer, even if fully vaccinated, if you have an underlying condition that places you within a high-risk category for complications. Again, we're not going to enforce it. You're adults, but that would be our best suggestion. And we recommend that you wear a mask if conducting an interview outdoors, as quite frankly, you'll likely need to be within 6 feet. We do need to respect space. We probably are not yelling from 10 feet apart. One thing is just, I have kind of in here in the presenter notes, and we'll share this with folks. We understand how hard these issues are. We understand the complications of COVID itself. We understand the fact that, in my opinion, frankly, our country is not talking about these hard choices like a bunch of adults. If any of this content that we're sharing today leads you to reconsider the decision to volunteer, we would understand that. We would just please ask you to communicate with us so we can, again, ensure coverage and come up with a contingency plan. And obligations go both ways. For our part, the COC will continue to monitor the CDC guidelines and Arkansas's rates. We would request an additional modification from HUD if A, we feel warranted, and B, they make the mechanism available again. Until this week, they were being pretty clear that they were not going to grant extensions due to COVID, and then Omicron did its Omicron thing, and HUD loosened their perspective. So we will be staying current with HUD and with local epidemiology. We will provide a mask for personal use to any volunteer who requests. We think at this point, most people have access to masks, but by all means, if you are volunteering with us and that would help you, let us know and we will close that gap. And without asking, we will provide a supply of masks to every point in time count team or location so that you can offer them to the individuals. And we will communicate any changes in our own requirements and recommendations from our site partners to all volunteers. And I know we're coming close to the end. We are of time. We are conveniently enough coming close to the end of these slides. I think there's one or two more content slides and then it's Q&A time. So when arriving at a site, please check in with the agency contact person. You will have been given a name. If you're working in a large team, and especially if there's going to be some movement out of line of sight, please exchange cell phone numbers with each other. We will provide each team with the following: the survey. Even if using Hyperion, I'm a skeptic. I'm a big fan of having a contingency plan, and I want everyone to have paper surveys. If you drop your phone in a bucket of water, I want you to be able to conduct interviews. We'll have hard copy handouts of local resources. We'll have masks to offer to the individuals. We'll provide information on how to submit any hard copies of forms you capture to us. For the small number of people that are doing like camp-based outreach, we'll have some things like bottles of water, granola bars to offer to people. We won't be doing that in sites. And PowerPoint's getting the better of me. Key contacts. If you have questions before the point in time count, please reach out to me and Cohen through our emails. And if you have questions or concern of the day of the contact, please don't hesitate to reach out to me by texting or calling on my cell. All right. Time for Q&A. So I'm gonna turn off my screen share and we'll be happy to answer any questions that folks have. All right, silence is assent. So I'm not quite sure what I can hold you to, but I just genuinely, we really appreciate everyone sharing their time, their interest in their community. This doesn't happen without a large number of volunteers. So thank you very much. This is not a speak now or forever hold your peace moment. So if a question occurs to you down the road, just reach out to me or Cohen or Pam, and we'll go from there. Are there questions in the chat box, Cohen?
No, just some thank yous.
Okay.
But you're all
Excellent.
welcome.
Great.
Thank you for being here as well.
Yeah.
And this will be recorded and sent out pretty soon. So
All right. Well, stay safe out there. We appreciate you, and you know where to find us with questions. And we'll have some concrete updates on the new dates and changes in those logistics. And also, I saw someone, Taylor, put a note in the chat box that you're unfortunately not able on the 24th of February. We certainly understand, and I've taken note of that, and we'll come up with a plan B. But thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, John and Cohen.
Thanks for everything, Pam. It's really been a 3-person team, so Pam gets the kudos as well. Thanks, everyone.